بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سيد دكتور محمد الأمين، الصيادلة الكرام بكافة مقاماتهم المحفوظة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. رحب بكم مسار حيدر التجاني، مدير مركز عبد الحميد إبراهيم للتدريب في إحدى فعاليات التطوير المهني المستمر بالصندوق القومي للإمدادات الطبية. ونتوقع ونرجو أن تكون المحاضرة ذات فائدة للحضور الكريم كسابقاتها. بدءا نستمحكم عذرا في 5 دقائق لعرض فيلم عن الصندوق لتوضيح آلية عمل الصندوق ولماذا كان CBD وما الذي جمع CBD والصندوق القومي للإمدادات الطبية.
الصندوق القومي للإمدادات الطبية تمكن من تنفيذ مهامه الاستراتيجية في توفير الأدوية والمستلزمات الطبية بنسب عالية خلال السنوات الماضية وتحقيق الكثير من الإنجازات المهمة رغم الظروف التي مرت بها البلاد، حيث زاد معدل الوفرة الدوائية من 46% في العام 2009 إلى أكثر من 90% في المتوسط منذ العام 2012. هذا بالإضافة إلى تمكن الصندوق من المحافظة على وفرة أدوية البرامج العلاجية المتخصصة المجانية، وتشمل أدوية الطوارئ والحوادث، السرطان، زراعة وغسيل الكلى، أدوية ومستهلكات بنك الدم والهيموفيليا وعلاج الأطفال بنسبة لا تقل عن 95% خلال الأعوام ال5 الماضية، رغم التحديات التي واجهت الإمدادات الطبية والمتمثلة في ندرة النقد الأجنبي وصعوبة التحويل البنكية في الفترة السابقة، والتي تم تجاوزها بتقديم تصور لبرنامج الأمم المتحدة للإنماء ليقوم بشراء بعض الأدوية المنقذة للحياة نيابة عن الإمدادات الطبية على أن تدفع القيمة بالجنيه السوداني وبالسعر الرسمي. ووقعت اتفاقية بين حكومة السودان ممثلة في وزارة التعاون الدولي ووزارة الصحة الاتحادية من جهة، وممثل الأمم المتحدة المقيم في السودان من جهة أخرى. هذه المبادرة الرائدة توفر أدوية للسودان بحوالي 20 مليون دولار سنويا. يقوم الصندوق بتنفيذ مبادرة وزارة الصحة الاتحادية بالتعاون مع وزارة المالية والتخطيط الاقتصادي بتوفير 43 صنفا من الأدوية من خلال مشروع العلاج المجاني للأطفال دون الخامسة بميزانية قدرها 125 مليون جنيه، مما أسهم في تقليل نسبة الوفيات وسط الأطفال دون الخامسة وتخفيف عبء فاتورة العلاج للمواطن. منذ إجازة قانون الصندوق في العام 2015 قام بإنشاء فروع له في 16 ولاية بهدف تقليل الهدر وتوحيدا للأسعار وتقوية للنظام الصحي وتوحيدا لمعايير الجودة. قيمة الأدوية الموجودة حاليا في فروع الصندوق بالولايات أكثر من 250 مليون جنيه، بينما كانت حوالي 20 مليون جنيه فقط عند أيلولتها للصندوق القومي، هذا فضلا عن المعاينات اللوجستية من عربات 30 عربة نقل مبردة و30 عربة للإشراف، وأجهزة وبرامج كمبيوتر وتهيئة بيئة المخازن وتحسين بيئة العمل وتدريب العاملين. استطاع الصندوق خفض أسعار أدويته دون تغيير يذكر لأكثر من 3 أعوام رغم الارتفاع المستمر في سعر الصرف، وتمكن من الحفاظ على أسعار أدوية الأمراض المزمنة، ويتجاوز عددها 195 صنفا دون تغيير، وبقيمة دعم حوالي 300 مليون جنيه سوداني، تعادل أسعار الصندوق فقط 47% في المتوسط مقارنة بأسعار القطاع الخاص وموحدة في جميع أنحاء البلاد. لضمان جودة الأدوية والمستلزمات الطبية التزمت الإمدادات باستيراد الأدوية المسجلة ما استطاعت إلى ذلك سبيلا، حيث ارتفعت نسبة الأدوية المسجلة في العام 2016 إلى 95% مقارنة بنسبة 60% في العام 2010. انعكس هذا الإجراء في انخفاض نسبة الأدوية المرفوضة من 9% في العام 2010 إلى أقل من 0.5% منذ العام 2014. قام الصندوق بتحديث وتطوير البيئة التخزينية وفقا لمتطلبات أسس التخزين الجيد الصادرة من منظمة الصحة العالمية، حيث قام بتركيب أجهزة لرصد درجات الحرارة والرطوبة على مدار الثانية في مخازنه المركزية عن طريق النظام الآلي الذي ينذر بأي تغيير يحدث يتجاوز المدى المسموح به. كما تمكن من زيادة السعة التخزينية الرأسية للصندوق، وذلك بإنشائه لمخزن جديد بمساحة تقدر بأكثر من 46 ألف متر مكعب، ولضمان جودة المنتجات الطبية أثناء الترحيل. تعاقدت الإمدادات مع شركة مؤهلة لنقل الأدوية في شاحنات مبردة من ميناء بورت السودان إلى مخازنه المركزية ومنها إلى مخازن فروعه بالولايات المختلفة. استطاع الصندوق مقابلة احتياجات الطوارئ إبان أحداث النيل الأزرق وهجليج وبكرشولة واحتياجات طوارئ الخريف وأمصال الحجاج والأدوية والمحاليل اللازمة لمعالجة الإسهالات المائية وجرح اليمن بكفاءة عالية. قام الصندوق بحوسبة جميع المكاتبات والتقارير والإجراءات مما ساعد في الضبط والالتزام بالحضور والانصراف في المواعيد، حيث كانت نسبة ساعات العمل في العام 2016 98%، أي لم يتجاوز التأخير أو الغياب بنسبة 2% فقط. في العام 2010 أدخل الصندوق نظام تخطيط موارد المؤسسات ERP، والذي أسهم في إنشاء قاعدة معلومات شاملة لكل العمليات بالصندوق وفروعه بالولايات، ومن خلاله أصبح الصندوق رائدا في تطبيقه لعدة أنظمة إلكترونية، وهي نظام الباركود ونظام مراقبة درجات الحرارة والرطوبة وتطبيق نظام الشراء الإلكتروني والبيع عن طريق الإنترنت ونظام الدفع الإلكتروني. أدخل الصندوق نظام الشراء الإلكتروني في العام 2015، وهي خدمة تتيح للموردين التقديم لعطاءات الصندوق بواسطة الإنترنت، وتعتبر التجربة الأولى من نوعها في السودان وإفريقيا. شاركت في هذا العطاء أكثر من 90 شركة خاصة مقارنة مع متوسط 50 شركة في العطاءات السابقة. تمكن الصندوق من خلال تنفيذ الشراء الإلكتروني الموحد الحصول على توفير مبلغ 12 مليون يورو في أول تجربة للشراء الموحد. بدأت الإمدادات في أغسطس من العام 2011 في استقبال طلبيات الزبائن بالإنترنت لتصبح أول مؤسسة في البلاد تعمل بنظام البيع الإلكتروني المتكامل، حيث يتيح النظام الفرصة للزبائن عمل الطلبيات وإرسالها إلكترونيا دون الحاجة إلى الحضور إلى مكاتب الإمدادات. استطاع الصندوق تلبية جميع طلبات زبائنه التي وصلت إليه إلكترونيا، وعددها أكثر من 22 ألف طلبية في العام 2016. قام الصندوق بإدخال خدمة توفير الأدوية عن طريق الاتصال الهاتفي في العام 2013 لتوفير الأدوية النادرة للمرضى وتلقي استفسارات وطلبات المرضى عن الأدوية الموجودة بالبلاد، وذلك عن طريق الاتصال بالرقم 59 وفي حالة عدم توفرها تقوم الإمدادات بتوفير هذه الأدوية من خارج البلاد. استطاع الصندوق توفير عدد 230 صنفا من خارج البلاد لأكثر من 2000 زبون بنسبة تنفيذ بلغ 98%. تم تنفيذ برنامج تنمية قدرات العاملين في مؤسسات تدريبية متخصصة داخل وخارج البلاد. استفاد من هذا البرنامج في العام 2016 1100 متدرب، منهم أكثر من 130 نالوا دورات خارج البلاد. ولمواصلة هذا البرنامج الطموح في تنمية قدرات العاملين ولتحسين جودة الأداء والاستفادة القصوى من الموارد التي توفرها الحكومة للأدوية، أنشأ صندوق مركز عبد الحميد إبراهيم للتدريب. يحتوي المركز على 4 قاعات تدريبية بعدد 30 مقعدا لكل قاعة، مع إمكانية ربط قاعتين لتناسب البرامج الموسعة ذات العددية الكبيرة، وقاعة مندور المهدي للمؤتمرات مزودة بشاشات ذكية وخدمة الترجمة الفورية، وقاعة أخرى لاجتماعات المجلس القومي لتنسيق الخدمات الصحية. يحتوي المركز أيضا على مختبر حاسوب متكامل بسعة 25 جهاز ونظام مؤتمرات الفيديو كونفرنس، بالإضافة إلى مكتبة إلكترونية وورقية وكل المعينات اللازمة للتدريب. وعلى خطى الإنجاز تمضي مسيرة الصندوق في تحقيق أهدافه الرامية إلى استمرار التميز وتحقيق أعلى معدلات الجودة على مستوى مؤسسات البلاد، فضلا عن الاطلاع بمسؤوليته لتحقيق الأمن الدوائي، بل واستمرار عطائه وخدماته الدولية إلى خارج الحدود كأبرز المؤسسات في المنطقة، من خلال ما يتوفر للصندوق من خبرة واسعة للكوادر البشرية وبنية تحتية تتسق مع المعايير العالمية، الأمر الذي جعل الصندوق واجهة سودانية تفخر بها البلاد.
طيب، شكرا لكم ولحسن استماعكم. الآن نخلص لموضوع المحاضرة بعنوان البويزنينج سنتر اوفرفيو. يقدمها لنا دكتور محمد الأمين، محمد عثمان الأمين. He's a consultant in toxicology, has his MSc Medical Toxicology merit from Cardiff University, certificate in training in clinical pharmacology and therapeutics and general medicine council, postgraduate certificate in clinical education, Newcastle University, postgraduate diploma of medical toxicology, Cardiff University, MRCB, membership of Royal College of Physicians, UK Royal College of Physicians, Diploma of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene, Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, and Baccalaureate of Medicine and Surgery taken from Shandi University, Shandi, Sudan. Welcoming with me Dr. Muhammad Al-Amin Usman in this lecture. نتمنى لكم محاضرة قيمة ومفيدة إن شاء الله. تدير الجلسة دكتورة أميرة جزولي، مدير برنامج التطوير المهني المستمر بالصندوق القومي للإمداد الطبية. شكرا جزيلا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues at the National Medicine Supplies Fund for extending this kind of invitation to teach and train and also learn, on which we have done myself and my good friend and colleague Ammar al-Bakr over the last few days. So this is meant to be an overview of the potential opportunities, but also the experiences that have been seen in poison centers around the world, with special emphasis on the United Kingdom. I have no academic or financial interest to declare. So poisoning is a well-recognized common cause of hospital admissions, morbidity, and mortality throughout the world. The first poison control center was established in the Netherlands in 1949, and this was in the wake of the Second World War, where lots of new industrial chemicals were now on the scene with the new industrial renaissance and development in Europe after the Second World War. The WHO directory suggests that there are about 309 poison control centers in service throughout the world. However, it is recognized that many of these do not necessarily conform to one particular model of service. And there are different understandings of different models of poison centers around the world. The United States of America, naturally, has the largest number of centers in one country, which is about 61. According to some other reports, it might be 57, but that's just a rough number. So the WHO has a World Directory of Poison Centers, which is available online. And the general definition of a poison center is that it's a source of expertise on diagnosing and managing and treating poisoning. These centers are functional on compiling data on toxic exposures, toxic substances, and therefore they have an important role to play in chemical safety and public health, not just with individual patients. We can characterize the epidemiology of poisoning, and this can help prioritize and direct prevention efforts throughout the world. And we also advise on the management of the health impacts of chemical incidents, whether in the home, in the workplace, at school, or on an industrial scale, or on a national scale, as per the exposure or incident that happens. And therefore, poison centers are very useful for surveillance of chemical exposures and chemical release. And you will find that poison centers are usually one of the first areas of contact, lines of contact, which are able to identify serious releases of chemicals, whether occupational or industrial, and even if it is of a more sinister military use, as we have seen in parts of the Middle East and other parts of the world. These roles that poison centers can play contribute to the national capacities which implement the international health regulations as per 2005. And therefore, any country in the world which is signatory to international health regulations should, by law, have a poison center functioning in that country. So, as I said, the United States of America has the largest number of centers. Roughly speaking, nearly every state of the US has one poison center. But it's not unheard of that some states, for example, the state of New York, has more than one poison center, depending on the population and the affluence of each state. There have been instances where some states have had their centers closed due to financial problems, and this has impacted on the care of poison in that state, and has also impacted on the pressure on emergency departments in hospitals. And I'll come to that later in my talk. Now, this is where your heart starts to sink. Look at the Middle East and Africa. Hardly any. But interestingly, look at Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. It might be fair to say that Iran alone probably has an equivalent number of poison centers compared to the whole of North Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and parts of Asia. And I remember an Iranian colleague in a conference in Dubai about 3 years ago actually they claim that their center in Luqman Hakim Hospital in Tehran was the oldest poison center in the Middle East, beating Ain Shams in Egypt. And they do still to this day provide very good high quality research, which is interesting. Why am I worried that we have less centers? Well, let's just go back one step to the whole world. Poisoning is a significant global health problem. Around 200,000 people die every year. These are numbers from 2012, from unintentional poisoning, accidental poisoning. 84%, the bulk of these deaths have happened in this part of the world, low income and middle income countries. Yet we have the least number or distribution of poison centers. And the economic and social cost is very significant. 10.7 million years of healthy life, or DALYs, disability-adjusted life years, are lost to poisoning in an area which needs every bit of contribution towards its economic growth. Now that's unintentional poisoning. Nearly a million people die every year due to suicide, intentionally. Chemicals play a significant role and number, and it's estimated that just pesticides alone as an agent cause about 370,000 deaths. And the bulk of these deaths is in the Southeast or South Asia region. It's a huge public health problem. This website, I like it very much, and I would recommend you look at it. Now, I think we're all in agreement that this is the world as we know it. Anybody? Halab is Sudanese here, so that's okay. But generally speaking, I think we're happy with the map, and maybe South Sudan is still not independent, but that's another story. But otherwise, the map is accurate. Yes? Now, this website changes the image of the world in accordance to different balances, not just geography. So if we change the world according to the burden of suicide or intentional self-harm, this is what the world would look like. The bulk of self-harm and suicide, China, India, 44% of the world's intentional self-inflicted deaths. Japan, probably about 14%, and then Russia, probably just under 10% alone. And as I said, the bulk of this here, a large amount, is pesticides. So you can see we have a big problem in our economic region of the world. I want to introduce you to a few examples just to give you a bit of an idea. Some mass toxicology disasters. Minamata Bay, Japan, South Japan. This is just south of Nagasaki, where the infamous atomic bomb happened. 1956, there was a huge industrial complex which was dumping methyl mercury waste into the bay. Now, Southeast Asian cuisine is heavily dependent on fish, and fish are well known to concentrate mercury into their tissues. Each household had a very good intake of fish in Minamata. The mercury bioaccumulated during these 30 years in the shellfish and fish in Minamata Bay and Shirano Sea, and the local population started to develop mercury poisoning. And it was noticed in the local animals. The cats were starting to act strangely, and therefore they called it dancing cat fever. This was a huge public disaster. The official numbers suggest that nearly 2,000 people have died, victims of this disaster, and the company had to provide financial compensation for about 10,000 people. This was one of the largest mercury disasters in the world. Moving on, a few years later, in Iraq, 1971, the Iraqi government imported grain which was treated with a methyl mercury fungicide against the fungi which grow from Mexico and the USA. It was consumed by the local Iraqi rural residents, and people started developing mercury poisoning, paresthesia, numbness in the skin, lack of coordination in walking, movement, loss of vision, and these were symptoms which had been seen with Minamata disease. The recorded deaths were somewhere in the region of 459, but figures suggest that this might have been as bad as 4,500 people. Now, these are the people who died. How many people developed permanent brain damage? How many people developed disability? And what is the social, society, and economic cost of such a disaster and tragedy? And this indeed, struggling with this, was the largest mercury poisoning disaster when it happened in the 1970s. And remember, after Minamata, there was an international agreement called the Minamata Convention regarding waste, industrial waste, and disposal of industrial waste. You would hope that the tragedy stopped there, but it didn't. I remember as a child in 1984 waking up and switching the TV on to be faced with this disaster. Bhopal in India, 1984. Union Carbide, one of the largest industrial companies in the world, producing pesticides. They had lots of tanks. The temperature was going up. The valves malfunctioned. The alarm sounded. Nothing was done. It exploded. Toxic gas, methyl isocyanate, was released after midnight. And next to the complex were slums, Second Ashwai, and thousands of people died in their sleep. Thousands of people died running away, and people developed horrific injuries, permanent disability. Families were destroyed. The local government estimated that this was nearly, well, the official death toll was 2,259 people. But as you can see, the local government estimated it might be twice that number, and other activists think it might be even much more higher. Until today, Bhopal is a name for a huge disaster of an industrial cause. This was the world's worst industrial incident in history. So toxicology can occur in huge numbers. But it can also affect individuals. But before I come to that, there's always a bright side to a gloomy story. And this is what I want to encourage people here in Sudan. This was a missed scientific opportunity because people who were killed, or at least injured, were lost to follow-up. This was the largest possible cohort where people could have understood the short-term, medium-term, and long-term effects of the toxic gas which was released, because nobody knew what happened to them a few years down the line. And obviously it is unethical to experiment on people, but we could have learned a bit more about this toxic gas, God forbid, for future incidents. Moving on. Nigeria, Zamfara, gold mining. Poor people who used to be farmers discovered gold and started mining. But because of the primitive use of mining methods, they were subjected to large amounts of lead and started developing lead poisoning. And indeed, this study carried by a number of doctors, one of them is Professor Dargan from Guy's Hospital in London, who's also one of the consultants in the National Poisons Information Service in the UK. They studied nearly 1,000 children who were affected by acute severe lead poisoning. Now, anybody who knows just a little bit about lead poisoning will understand the tragedy, the disaster. How many people, how many kids, how many children have had their neurological development now stunted by this poisoning? They went on and chelated children under the age of 5, 3,000 courses of chelation. This is probably the biggest chelation campaign in history. These papers are available for free online, and I do strongly recommend that you have a look at them. You'd hope it stops there. Libya, Tunisia, Kenya, mass poisoning with methanol. Estimated to about 1,600 people in Libya and Tunisia. And the tragedy there was twofold. The lack of availability of the ideal antidote for mepizole, and the misguided refusal of some physicians, as I've mentioned to some of the trainees, from using IV ethanol because they felt that it was haram, forbidden, when clearly what they should have been doing was to give the IV ethanol to save human life. Thousands of people died, and thousands of people died in Kenya as well. And these outbreaks are still ongoing in different parts of the world. Other examples of mass use of toxins: the Tokyo Metro in March 1995, which was subjected to a terrorist attack with sarin gas. And because of lack of knowledge, I haven't put the videos because I've been told they are quite distressing and they're not pleasant to watch. But the attackers took the sarin canisters in plastic bags, left them on the metro train, and left the train. The first responders, a few people developed toxicity, but one of the people, what he did, he kicked the bag out of the train. And obviously kicking it, he dispersed the contents and increased the number of casualties. Al-Ghouta, western and eastern Ghouta near Damascus. Syrian regime uses sarin gas in a chemical attack in August 2013, which was replicated earlier this year again. Calling a toxicologist is always a good idea, because you will get strange things in your career. September 1978 in London, a Bulgarian journalist by the name of Georgi Markov, who was an anti-communist activist, was walking home in the evening. He was approached by someone who attacked him with an umbrella. He hit him on his leg. What the umbrella contained inside was this small 1.7 millimeter ball. You can see there's small balls in here. Inside it was lysine. Lysine, which is from the lysine plant, from the castor oil plant, khirwa. Probably one of the most poisonous natural substances in the world. He died within hours. And it was only on autopsy that they found the small ball at the back of his leg. Amman, 1997, Khalid Mish'al leaving a hotel, approached by two men who sprayed a mysterious object into his ear. He became sick very, very soon. But luckily for him, there were two Jordanian security intelligence officers nearby who chased the men and caught them. They turned out to be Israeli Mossad agents. King Hussein was infuriated and threatened to call off the peace agreement, and Bill Clinton pressurized Benjamin Netanyahu that he should hand over the antidote immediately, and also humiliated the Israelis in releasing the Hamas leader Ahmad Yassin. The exact nature of the compound hasn't been entirely revealed, but it's widely believed that it was a very potent opiate which was used to induce death. He was a survivor. Closer to home for me, in London, October 2006, a young man from Russia came in sick to a London hospital, sorry. He became very unwell. He lost his hair. His white cell count started falling. And it was only after some time that he revealed his true name, Alexander Livinchenko, an ex-KGB agent who was poisoned with polonium 210. 3 weeks later, despite a rocky illness, he died, leaving behind a trail of radioactivity in some of the streets of London. Now, interestingly enough, this paper was published in The Lancet by Professor Dargan and colleagues, but they had to wait for a number of years until legally they were allowed to do so because of the politically sensitive nature of the case, and because in the UK, any suspected death from poisoning, and certainly if it's a murder, you're not allowed to issue a death certificate. It has to go through a legal process and an inquest led by what's known as the coroner. So this took quite a few years, but this was just published last year. Again, freely accessible. I do recommend you read it as well. Now, this happened in February. I'll let you watch this video and see what happened. Kuala Lumpur Airport. This is the brother, half-brother of the president of North Korea. Two ladies came up to him and wiped a wet cloth over his face. As you can see, he was explaining to the police and security people what was happening. They took him to the clinic in the hospital, in the airport, sorry. And he became very unwell very, very quickly, having a fit, They called the ambulance to get him to Putrajaya Hospital. But he died on the way. We had a small debate at work. What do we think killed him, being such a high-profile figure? And I remember one of my supervisors said, this is going to be VX, one of the most potent chemical weapon substances known, synthesized in Germany before the Second World War. A few drops on the skin of a human being are more than enough to kill someone. So, before you start to all get depressed about the terrible nature and situation in the world, I'll move on to speak to you about the National Poisons Information Service, where I work and where I've been training for the last 6 years. This is a network of 4 units, which was established in 1963. We have units in Edinburgh, Newcastle, where I trained, Birmingham, and Cardiff. We provide a 24-hour advisory telephone service with trained specialists in poisons information. And these answer clocks 24/7. Now, the calls are not directly from the public. These are calls from healthcare professionals. There's an on-call clinical toxicologist 24/7 to answer any calls which are referred in case of complexity or calls which have public health implications. Now, the reason I emphasize we don't have public calls directly, most poison centers in the world get calls from the public directly. However, ours come through healthcare professionals or healthcare services, which I'll explain. We provide an online resource of information known as Toxbase, which is a poisons information database which was developed in 1982, and it went online on the internet in 1999. Now, the Department of Health, the Ministry of Health in the UK, has designated it as a first-line information source. So healthcare professionals are advised to look it up first before they contact our service. And on this database, we have records for about 17,000 products, which are continuously updated and reviewed. In the last year alone, there were over 500,000 user sessions and nearly 2 million separate product accesses recorded in that year. And like anything in life, we now have a Toxbase app for your phone if you would like to use one and download one to use offline. So, who calls the MPIS? We have a non-emergency advice number, 111 in England, NHS Direct in Wales, and NHS 24 in Scotland, which is manned by nurses. You pick up the phone, and this is to save and reduce the pressure on the emergency services, so people do not inappropriately use emergency ambulances or the fire services or the police. And they gain information or advice on what they need to do. Now, occasionally, these will be complex, so they will call us after consulting Toxbase. We also get calls from the police, from the fire services, and from ambulance paramedics if their work involves any poisoning or suspected poisoning. Her Majesty's Prison Service, hospital-based health professionals, whether in the emergency department or critical care, who have ill patients who they need advice on. And as you can see, the public will call these advice people who will look at Toxbase, as well as the healthcare professionals will look on Toxbase. If Toxbase doesn't answer, then they call our number, and they are answered by the information scientists, who we call the spies. If it's a complex call, the spies will then speak to one of the clinical consultants and refer the case. And every year we have about 2,000 cases referred to the consultants. In total, we receive about 45,000 calls a year. We also have the Mps Product Center, where we keep a register of 200,000 safety data sheets of industrial and chemical products for reference. Last year, 28,000 safety data sheets were added. We produce a monthly newsletter, which has a summary of all the up-to-date scientific peer-reviewed literature which has been published relating to toxicology. We also run the UK Teratology Information Service for advice on medicines use in pregnancy and in women of childbearing age, with a portal which is free for the public, called BUMPS, the Best Use of Medicines in Pregnancy, which gives reliable and accurate information to women and their partners regarding different drugs and their safety in pregnancy. It's an excellent resource. I would 100% recommend it to you all, and I'm sure you will have lots of people who will find it useful here as well. This has been accessed last year over 300,000 times, and there have been nearly 1.5 million accesses from the public to the service. So poisoning in the UK is a common presentation, about 160,000 annual admissions to UK hospitals. That's about 1% of all admissions. It's as common as myocardial infarctions in the UK. So it's quite a common presentation. And therefore, it's a huge healthcare burden. It has huge implications in the UK. And this is why our service is important. And this is why you can see why we receive so many inquiries annually, which are dealt with very well. Now, this is a profile. As you can see, this is Talkspace when it was started. And you can see there's been increasing use. The importance of Talkspace is that with the increasing use of Talkspace, the telephone line has become less busy. And that's what we want, because it's financially and technically difficult to man the phones for such a large amount of inquiries. These are the consultant calls. And you can see that there's some peaks. And these correspond with Talkspace peaks. Now, this peak was when we had an explosion of novel psychoactive substances hitting the streets of the UK and people becoming unwell because of drugs of abuse which had not been recognized in the past. And I think we're starting to see some of them, unfortunately, now in Sudan. And this peak came around the time when the MHRA changed the guidelines for paracetamol poisoning management, and everybody started to panic. Who do we need to treat, and how long do we need to treat, and what do we need to do? But then usually afterwards, things plateau and settle down. So you can see we get a lot of useful information and statistics to use. This is the second video just to give you a practical demonstration of how our spies receive the calls, what our patients look like in the emergency departments, and how our three-way telephone system works when we have a consultant referral. Some of you will have seen it again, but I'm sure you wouldn't mind watching it again. Oops.
Everything is a poison. It's not necessarily the type of poison that you just consider. It's the dose you take that poison at, which gauges the extent of injury on a person.
Stop.
So the story we have with Michael is that essentially he has had an overdose, I think an intentional overdose of some drugs, mostly smack, heroin and some diazepam. And then he's been found at a metro station by a kind passerby who was actually a nurse at the RVI, who then obviously phoned for an ambulance, and he was subsequently brought to us.
So Michael, you're just feeling getting a bit tight there now. Can I have a little look in your mouth? Is that all right? Just open up there for me.
Well, no one gets me, and I'm really getting pissed off now.
All right.
My mother's had 12-minute strokes, right?
Okay.
And her girlfriend is current cancer, right?
I'm sorry to hear you've had a bad time. I'm a doctor and I'm just worried about your health, so I just want to have a look at you, okay?
It'll take 2 seconds.
Take this stuff, mate, now.
Hang on.
Michael,
It's nearly done.
We just need to know your blood pressure, that's all. It just feels a bit tight. It's not doing any harm, okay? I want to help you with your health, okay? I'm worried about you.
But I don't want to know.
Right, okay. Can you tell me what you've had today? What have you taken?
I've had smack, I've had crack.
Okay.
No.
You've had a lot.
No.
Yeah, alcohol? Any other tablets?
No.
Are you allergic to anything, Michael? Any medicines that you're allergic to?
Women.
Women? Yeah, I've heard that before, but no medicines.
I don't like hospitals, right?
I don't want you to go away from here and end up with permanent damage to your body that you've then to live with the rest of your life just because we let you go today.
At least 1 or 2 a day we see of that type of overdose. We're probably seeing maybe about 10 or 12 a day roughly, but of the sort of the heroin and sort of the sort of drugs you can buy on the street of that equivalent nature, then yeah, that's fairly common, at least twice a day.
Poisons and chemicals.
What's been happening on this occasion, Doctor?
She has swallowed several wraps of either cocaine and heroin or a mix of cocaine and heroin. Now, she's unsure of how many she swallowed. She did it in a rush. And it was just to know whether you had any advice about how we would normally manage that.
What did she wrap them in?
I think it's a cling film wrap.
So, Doctor, are we thinking that this patient is a drug dealer as such and is wanting to supply the drugs? Or are we thinking she just wants to escape the police and she just swallowed these wraps to evade detection?
I presume because it was a raid that she was hiding them from the police.
And do we know when the raid happened?
About 7 o'clock this morning.
She'll need an 8-hour observation period at the bare minimum.
Okay.
Abdominal CT scanning is the diagnostic workup of choice for any body packer or body stuffer. If there's any glaring bags within her GI tract, that we're really thinking she is giving us at least some accurate history that she has ingested something.
And that would be recommended even in asymptomatic people?
I would recommend it from my personal suggestion.
Your colleague mentioned an abdominal CT.
Yeah.
For picking up the packages. Would you agree with that? Or?
That is probably the best modality for imaging.
Yeah.
Generally, we would call this a body stuffing episode. I mean, the main risk here for her is from cocaine as opposed to heroin, because if a heroin package breaks, then you can reverse that with antidote. If the cocaine package breaks here, you've got much more problems.
Managing these patients can be extremely challenging. They often don't want to provide information because they're concerned that information they provide might incriminate them. They're often under arrest at the time they're being evaluated clinically, so that there are police there on the scene as well. And obtaining a setting where you can discuss issues with the patient with confidentiality can be sometimes challenging.
Can I ask there, Craig, are you a lawyer at this law firm in Brussels?
Yeah, that's right. I am, yeah.
You said that ethanol's the active substance of something.
Oh, yeah, it works. It's a hand sanitizer.
Good afternoon, Ash Poison Chemicals, Dave speaking.
Kevin took an overdose of paracetamol 48 hours ago. He took 72 tablets at 36 grams.
And it's 48 hours ago now?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And it was obviously self-harm.
One issue we can see here is that he has got some abnormal liver function, and I guess we wait and see what direction his liver function is going to go. How are you feeling this morning?
Tired. Regret it.
Here, I'm just going to sit you up a little bit because you need to be a bit more comfortable. Is that okay? You were vomiting before.
Yeah.
That's settled down now.
It has, but I've had very little to drink. Okay. And I've had nothing to eat since Sunday.
And how many tablets do you think you might have taken?
Somewhere between 72 and 78.
Okay, it's a fair number, isn't it?
had planned to take more, but I threw up before I got to finish what I was trying to do. Things were just building up. I've got kids, and it wasn't anything to do with them.
Okay. Well, I think
it wasn't anything to do with my partner either. It was just within me.
One of the main problems with paracetamol overdose is that it can cause damage to the liver. So they decided, quite rightly, that you needed to have a course of treatment with the paracetamol antidote, and that's what the drip is that's running at the moment. And we need to repeat your blood tests once that infusion is finished to see what's happening with your liver.
Hello, I've got your tablets. Are you taking your tablets or not?
This particular product is an aerosol to help sleep, and there's a lot of stuff on there that I don't really notice. It's got all sorts of stuff in it.
Right.
She thinks he's sprayed something in the mouth. His mouth looks fine and he's absolutely well. It's an Avon product to aid sleep.
Can I send how old, please?
16 months. I wish they'd lock these things away.
Do you have the list of ingredients there, please?
I have a list of them. We've got things like aqua alcohol, Dentac, PEG 40.
Right. The one that jumps straight out there is the alcohol. It's going to take a very small amount of alcohol to cause toxicity in a child of that age. It's going to have to be sent off down.
So she needs to go down. Yeah.
Nancy's gone with her. Right. And that's just in front of
Okay. Right, what is it that he's taking? The alcohol and the aromatherapy oils, probably the things that are going to be the worst. And what happened?
He just took it off the windowsill, and before me and my sister had a chance to take it off, and he just went like that, and it went in his mouth. But then some of it took him out, but I don't know if he swallowed it out either.
Right. And how much was in it?
It was like, she says there was about that much in it.
About that much in, and did you spill some?
He did spill, yeah.
Can I have a little look at you?
Come here, babe.
Come here. Can I have a little look in your mouth, sweetie pie, eh? Oh, I'm just going to have a little... He's trying to taste my nose. Just, I cannot actually smell it on in there, so whether he's actually sort of ingested it.
We've given, I give him water straight away.
You give him water straight away, right?
He says I'll give him a nice pop just to make sure that he's kept up fluid.
Yeah, and he hasn't been sick or anything
like
that. Okay. Right then, young man.
There's a lot of accidental overdoses with certain things. I think a lot of people don't realise how toxic certain substances are, and things like screen wash, antifreeze can take a mouthful, and that's incredibly toxic. So, 2 seconds. Poisons Information Service, Yasmin speaking.
George's carers have just caught him about 20 minutes ago spraying some air freshener into his mouth.
Okay, so you can see we get complex cases, children, people who are suicidal, people who take recreational drugs, and they can all land into hospital, and without our expert advice, it can be quite challenging. So do we have an impact? Well, we work with our partners. For instance, we've worked with the Clinical Biochemistry Society to agree on guidelines for lab analyses for poisoned patients. What blood tests do they need? How quick are certain blood tests required? Which blood tests can wait? Which blood tests need to go to a regional or a tertiary center? So we provide joint guidelines which we work on together. We've worked with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine to provide a nationally approved list of antidotes which have to be stocked in a certain manner in certain emergency departments. I think I got an email or message from Dr. Amira with lots of red crosses to say this is not available, this is not available, this is not available. So we want you to work on getting them available in Sudan. We do work on surveillance of pesticides and therefore provide information on pesticides exposures in the UK. And there's also a lot of international collaboration, the use of blood purification, dialysis internationally, the South Asian collaboration, which has worked on pesticides in Sri Lanka and South Asia. We've worked on drugs of abuse and provided reports on new drugs which we've found, which have been reported to our service. And these reports have helped inform the policymakers in the UK and indeed led to legal control and banning of some of these substances, including the new recreational drugs, which unfortunately are quite well spread. They have very attractive wrappers, very interesting names like Spice and Flash and Happy Joker, but can be very, very dangerous substances. Our data collection amongst other agencies led to the banning of these substances with the Psychoactive Substances Act last year. Now, this act is significant because previously in the UK, drugs of abuse were banned based on chemical structure. However, these substances were being provided at a rate of nearly 2 new substances every week. General information seems to suggest that this is mainly made and produced from China and sold over the internet. Legislation, as you know, is a very slow process, and therefore they changed it, instead of chemical effect, to psychoactive effect. And I might add, this is very close to the actual Islamic law interpretation of banning psychoactive substances, and mu'athirat al-aqliya, which is very interesting. And it's a faster process, but they had to obviously make an exception for caffeine and for alcohol. Okay? We've identified clinical toxicology, Simon Thomas, who you saw in the video, and Simon Hill, who was, we were both registrars at the same time, and both of them have been my consultant colleagues and supervisors. Even analgesics, coproxamol, I'm not sure whether you have it in Sudan or not, which is paracetamol, and dextropropoxyphene, which is an opioid. Some of the research and data collection in Edinburgh, and one of the authors is Rizwa Afshari from Iran, who did his PhD in Edinburgh, and is a leading toxicology figure in Iran and Asia now. They led on looking at reports of ECG abnormalities. And one of the doctors involved was Professor Dawson from Australia, who was visiting the UK at the time. They identified cases of fatalities because of ECG abnormalities. And this led to the MHRA withdrawing coproxamol from the UK as of 2005, 2007. We've done studies looking at cleaning products and their toxicity. This moved on to dishwashing tablets, soluble film automatic dishwashing products, oven cleaners. But probably we're very busy with paracetamol overdose because this is the commonest agent used, about 90,000 cases annually in the UK. Now, the game changed. For about 20 years, we used 2 lines in treating acute paracetamol overdose, with a high-risk line and a low-risk line, looking at paracetamol levels 4 hours onwards and deciding when to treat, looking at depleted glutathione stores in malnutrition, inducing liver enzymes, and chronic disease. But then there were a few cases which were found above the lines where there were some issues with toxicity. And then this hit the coroner report on a 19-year-old girl who died with a paracetamol overdose, led to the change of the guidance in 2012. And therefore, we now have a lower line of treatment. So people who are higher are now getting treated. Now, that had its implications, which we measured, and we published in 2 papers in 2013, 2014, where we showed that the change of guidance led to a 52% increase in acetylcysteine treatment, led to longer more hospital admissions for paracetamol treatment. And we calculated to save one life over 2 years, this was going to cost the UK £16 million because of that change of guidance. So this is a type of data we can collect, analyze, and provide to the policymakers, not just in the UK, but everywhere where people can do such data collection. And therefore, I will argue that poison centers do have a positive impact. Indeed, there have been studies in the United States about the cost-benefit analysis of poison centers. There have been studies in Brazil which showed that poison centers reduce the length of hospital stay. Again, in the US, in Singapore, improvement of public health in Morocco, and systemic reviews which show overall benefits from poison centers. And indeed, Harrison et al. In 1995 devised a production model which shows the activities and what outputs that they have, whether education or increased quality of treatment, clinical improvements, mortalities avoided, decreased healthcare use, data collection, or even research can all come from the use of poison centers and their activities. In the United States, which is a very monetary-based healthcare system, it's been estimated that for each $1 funding given to poison centers, there is a saving of $13 given. The total budget of poison centers in the US is about $136 million US dollars. The savings estimated, which came out in the Lewin report in 2012, were about $1.8 billion. So there's a lot to be said about the role. This is the Lewin report, and this went to Congress and the different stakeholders. What about the MPIS? Remember I said in the US, these centers get calls directly from the public, whereas we get them from healthcare professionals. Therefore, we get less calls. So it might be argued we don't have such an impact because of the smaller number. Well, I carried out a study 2 years back with my colleagues, just looking at the reduction of referrals from primary healthcare alone to hospitals after speaking to our service. And we found that we actually reduced referrals to hospitals by 18%, which when we extrapolated in total led to a saving of 6 million UK sterling pounds. Our budget is only 3.5 million, so we do make a saving on one service out of potentially 6. So yes, we do have an impact, we do save money, we are cost effective. What about Sudan? What challenges can we think of here? This is why we're here today. We have issues with abuse of pharmaceuticals, medicines, prescribing issues, drugs of abuse. People speak about tramadol, but I was also interested and shocked to learn that we also had novel psychoactive substances now. What about household products? How many of you have heard of the children who have drank some liquid which was kept in a Coca-Cola bottle or can, inappropriately stored? How do you treat them? What's in it? What do you analyze? Toxic alcohols, methanol, for example. Antifreeze, where it's available. Animal envenomation, scorpion stings, snake bites. How do we treat them? What do we give? Industrial and occupational exposures. Health and safety is not big. We have issues with our industry and occupations, don't we? How much do we know? Do we have any figures? Do we have any statistics? Let's look at what the WHO shows. These are statistics on unintentional poisoning mortality. This is Africa. The worst numbers are in Angola, which are more than South Sudan. Okay? And this is the range of Angola. Now, Sudan belongs to the East Mediterranean Regional Office. And I'm sorry to say, we have the highest mortality. And our mortality is similar to Angola, which has the worst mortality in the African continent. There's a lot of work to be done. we have a lot of challenges ahead. And we know why. We have lots of examples. Who hasn't heard about gold mining in North Sudan and in Darfur? Mercury, poisoning. This doctor who spoke to Al Jazeera from Al Ibadiyah says he sees 3 mercury poisoning cases every day, 3 lead poisoning cases every day. These are young men. What is the socio-economic impact of this? Are they getting any treatment? Do we collate them? Do we even recognize that there's an issue? Khartoum, mass methanol poisoning. Only 4 years ago, 71 children, street children, died of methanol poisoning here in the capital. What treatment can we offer? How can we recognize the problem? Is alcohol a problem? Who would believe we are the top Arab country in alcohol consumption? Is that not a public health problem? I'll leave you to answer that one. The Gulf is not in good shape. This is just from The Economist a few months ago. Captagon, an amphetamine, huge public health issue. Saudi Arabia is the 4th country in the world in consumption of Captagon. This is a disaster. And it will spill over because we are close neighbors. There's no doubt about it. Lots of people speak of Sudan as being a transit country for drugs. Well, that might change. The war in Syria, the regional center of drugs production used to be Lebanon. But when the civil war started in Syria with the loss of authority and security, the drug labs moved from Lebanon to Syria. This in red shows that we are now receiving Captagon tablets in excess of over 10 million tablets in 18 months. We are a big market now. We're no longer just a transit area. We are a market. We are a market as big as Saudi Arabia and probably as big as other countries which have not been specified here. It's the youngsters, it's our students, it's our school children. This is a disaster. And I wish it would end there, but even recent reports now suggest that we are becoming a producer. So in a country where we struggle to produce hardly anything, and the dollar's going up, we can now say we are exporters of drugs. What a job. It's terrible, isn't it? Sober down a bit, antivenoms. I had an interesting discussion with Dr. Amir about the use of antivenoms here in Sudan. I had an interesting discussion with a doctor from Kosti about antivenoms. Do we have any background information on the epidemiology of snakes? How many venomous snakes do we have in Sudan? How many types of snakes do we have in Sudan? Is it just simple enough to say that we only have Abdarak and sing with Khalaf Allah Hamad Sim Abdarak? Or is it a bit more complicated than that? Which snakes are venomous? Who knows? Does anybody here know of any Sudanese reference or book about snakes? Do we have one? Do you think we have one? Does anybody think we have one? This is a question for everyone. Okay, you're in for a surprise. Would you believe in 1935, the Natural History Museum in Khartoum issued a book on venomous snakes? Has anybody seen this book? Does your heart not bleed that this reference was somewhere we could start from? How many of you know that we used to locally produce antivenoms in Khartoum? It's a surprise, isn't it? And yet we're in this tragic situation. There are guidelines available from WHO. They're free. They can be easily downloaded, and I do suggest that everybody gets a copy because you will be asked as pharmacists or healthcare professionals about them in the care. And we need to make sure that we appropriately use antivenoms, because I've heard stories of healthcare professionals in some states of Sudan giving patients up to 70 vials of antivenom, which is clearly a crazy thing to do. And it's not difficult. In Doha, two of my friends, Walid Awad and Jalal Al-Isai, who have just been appointed consultants, sat down and were able to derive clinical guidelines for one of their local snakes. So there's nothing to prevent any of you sitting down and deriving local guidelines to help our practice here. We just need the determination to do it, and it can be done. It can be done. So to recap, the International Programme on Chemical Safety has given guidelines for poison control, as I've said, preventing and managing poisoning, providing information services and clinical services, analytical toxicology, toxicovigilance, not too far away from pharmacovigilance, which you are now all experts on, courtesy of Dr. Ammar, response to major emergencies, antidotes and their availability, data collection, which we really need here in Sudan, and library requirements, which we've got a nice invitation from Dr. Amir and Dr. Sarah to use their wonderfully stocked library here. So there is potential. We can meet this, but we need to work on it and work hard. I'd like to invite you all to our next meeting, the Middle East and North Africa Clinical Toxicology Association, which is a young organization. Our next meeting will be hopefully in March 2018 in Muscat. I would love to see you come to present some of the work that you do here. And there are lots of interesting cases which some of the participants have told me about. They need to be published. They need to be reflected. Let's show the world that we have something to present. And we can do it. Thank you very much. Any questions, discussion? And you're more than welcome to jot down my email if you wish to contact me at any point in time.
نفتح الفرصة للأسئلة لو في أي سؤال عنده سؤال قبل ما نختم.
Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank very much Dr. Muhammad for his insightful and interesting lecture. Maybe I missed it, but my question is, you did mention that the admission due to poisons represents 1% from the whole admissions, hospital admissions. Can you just elaborate more on the subtypes of this poisonous admission? I mean, whether they are intentional and unintentional due to medications, because I had experience in Asia where they have suicidal attempts using pesticides, and you just confirmed that that the vast majority of the burden of organophosphorus suicidal attempts occurs there in Asia. Thank you.
So you're right about Asia. The commonest, or one of the commonest agents are pesticides. Yeah. And basically this goes by the rule that people will overdose or use what is available to them. And that's why paracetamol is the commonest agent in the UK, because you can buy paracetamol from shops or pharmacies over the counter without need for a prescription. Interestingly, there was an attempt around 1999-2000 where by law selling and purchasing of paracetamol was limited to packets of 16 tablets. It dented the numbers, but it didn't overall make a huge difference, because if you are intent on committing suicide, you'll go to shop 1, you'll go to shop 2, and you'll bring as much as you need. Paracetamol is the top, and then that's usually followed by antidepressants, particularly tricyclics such as amitriptyline. and this is for intentional self-harm or suicidal attempts. So antidepressants are the second top. And then you start to see other agents such as antihypertensives and so on and so forth, as well as sedatives such as benzodiazepines. But paracetamol is our commonest one. Now, as I said, the MHRA estimates that it's about 90,000 cases a year. If you remember the number was about, in total, 160,000. So it's nearly just above half.
And where do they have to contact? Because they don't contact your center directly, the customers, I mean, or the general public.
So usually people who've taken an overdose wouldn't contact our service, but they'd either call the emergency services, they might be found by a relative, they might have spoken to a friend, and more recently, they might have put it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And people will then find out, I've done something stupid, and they'll call them what's going on, I've taken an overdose. So we usually get them into the hospitals. So we don't directly treat all of these overdoses, but we provide the information, the sources, to guide the treatment of them. If it's a complicated overdose, we'd expect sometimes to get a call from either the doctor, the paramedic, or the nurse looking after the patient. Okay?
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
About Sudan being a producer, what do you produce, if you know?
Captagon. Amphetamines.
Amphetamines?
Yep. I'm not sure where the agents are, so maybe Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, for those who haven't, I can tell you've been watching too much TV now. Breaking Bad is an American drama series which has quite interesting science in it about chemical production. I haven't watched it myself, but I know of it. It's a bit dark. I wouldn't recommend it, though, for everybody.
تفضل دكتور ابتهاج بالمايك.
What is that? You said that maybe it's a VX. So what is a VX?
So VX is an organophosphate.
Just VX?
But a very potent. The reason it's named VX, it's just the first two letters of the scientists who developed it.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. First, thank you for coming and give us this wonderful lecture. Are there any intentions to start our own center here? I mean, كنا عندنا مركز حقنا هنا Toxicology.
So at the moment, I wouldn't say we have an official center, but we have an excellent service, a budding service, which is very promising, which has been led by the Khartoum Medicines Information Center. As far as I'm aware, they've been receiving inquiries, not just from Khartoum, but other parts of the Sudan dealing with poisoning. So they've started a budding service, which that we all support and help to sustain and develop.
Another thing, for clinicians also, at what level they start contact your centers?
At what level, as in what stage of?
What stage of the case?
As it, house officers,
yes.
Any level can call us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Regarding a question about when will we have our own Poisons Information Center in Sudan, I think I would rephrase the question. What are your plans to have a Poisons Information Center in Sudan? Because in the meantime, we do not want to be the country with the highest mortality in the Eastern Mediterranean region and in Africa. يعني الواحد لما يفكر كده كل يوم بيمر في أعداد هائلة جدا من الناس بتتأثر. In the meantime, some people stepped in to close the gap. يعني مثلا ناس مركز المعلومات الدوائية في ولاية الخرطوم are filling a gap أكبر كتير جدا من الكاباسيتي اللي بيعملوها و they're going into much higher level. الناس ممكن تشتغل مع بعض يا اخواننا في المدة دي وما تنتظر انه حاجة تحصل. ابسط مثال للتعاون في المسألة دي انه ناس مركز الخرطوم بتجيهم الاسئلة بتاعت البويزنينج. عملنا جروب بتاع واتساب اقترحوا دكتور محمد اللمين، دخلوا فيه كل الناس بتاعنا المركز، دخل فيه محمد اللمين، دخل فيه دكتور سوداني ثاني دكتور عصام سيد من الامارات برضه عنده باك جراوند بتاع توكسيكولوجي اكيوت ميديسين. عملنا يعني عملنا اتمس ممتازه الحمد لله، كتر خير الدكتور محمد اللمين دخل لنا توك سبيس في السودان مجانا. الناس ماشيه وبتعمل في اشياء ما تنتظر، كل حاجه بتحصل واحده واحده لكن ما تنتظر. كتر خيرها لقينا الانتيدوت ليست بتاعت الرويال كوليج اوف امرجنسي ميديسين، وديناها لدكتوره اميره بتنظر في الامدادات الطبيه، بتنظر انه في شنو ممكن يتعمل عشان نوفر الممكن يتوفر. بتجي كيسز بعد مرات بنوصل للكلينيشن الضارب لمركز الخرطوم بكريتيكال كير سبيشاليستس في حتات مختلفه من العالم يساعدوه to think together، يعني مش to advise or to instruct، لكن الناس تتفاكر وتشوف ممكن تعمل شنو في الكيسز دي. فإن ذا مين تايم الناس ما تجي في حته واحده، نشوف ممكن نعمل شنو، لانه الاحتياج is there، والممكن البيشنت ده يكون اي زول، ممكن يكون انا، ممكن يكون يعني my relative، ممكن anybody else. فالناس تتحرك وتمشي في الاتجاه ده وتشوف ممكن تعمل شنو، لانه ما ممكن ننتظر لحد ما حاجه تحصل. شكرا جزيلا.
قبل ما نختم انا بس عايزه اقول يعني كلام بسيط عن الحته بتاعت البويزن سنترز. يعني هي اريا بتاعت ريسيرش لكل الناس اللي بتدرس توكسيكولوجي، كلينيكال فارماسيست، بالذات في حته الانتي سنيك، انتي بينوم وانتي سكوربيان، لانه نحن على حسب الداتا اللي عندنا الكونسومشن بتاعت الانتي سنيك عاليه جدا جدا. فيعني في مستشفيات عندها بروتوكولز لكن برضو الحاجه ما ناشونال بروتوكولز، فالحته دي ممكن تكون اريا ريسيرش لكل الناس. برضو الانتي دوت والافيلابيلتي بتاعتها، حتى الانكويريز اللي بتيجي لمركز الخرطوم الكيسز بتاعتها ممكن تبقى استاديز عشان نقدر نعمل استيميشن لانواع الانتيدوت اللي احنا دايرينها. فهي اريا بتاعت ريسيرش. بالنسبه لموضوع البويزن سنترز ان السودان، زي ما قال دكتور عمار، يعني نحن بنمشي في خطوات. هسه هي بتتقدم از سيرفيس لحد ما يعني يبقى استابليش سنترز متكامل. لكن الناس هي يعني دكتور محمد اللمين ما مقصر ومعاه الزملاء يجاوبوا يعني اون كول طوال لو في اي كيس حصل لها يعني صعوبه من الفارماسيست الشغالين في مركز المعلومات الدوائيه، مركز الخرطوم للمعلومات الدوائيه. فانا اتمنى انه الناس تحاول يعني تنظر للحته دي وتعمل ريسيرش فيها، تعمل داتا. بعد ذاك الحته بتاعت الجفرمنت تو استابليش بتجي بالداتا وبالريسيرش اللي احنا بنعمل ان شاء الله. انا اخيرا اشكر حضوركم، اشكر كل الناس الجاد عشان تحضر البويزن سنترز، وبشكر كثير دكتور عمار، دكتور محمد اللمين، ما قصروا، قعدوا معانا 4 أيام، فادونا جدا. يعني أنا عن نفسي بشكرهم شكر كثير، وعن الإمدادات طبعا. ففي النهاية نحن عندنا يعني قدرة كلمة الشكر ذاتها بسيطة عليهم. فدي Certificate of Abbreviation من الناشونال ميديكال Supply Fund on behalf of the General Director of National Medical Supply Dr. Jamal Khalafallah to Dr. Muhammad Al-Amin, Consultant in Clinical Toxicology, in facilitating seminar on poison centers, an overview of experience and opportunities. Thank you very much. ننبه ننبه الحضور قبل ما يمرقوا في بريك بتاع شاي. قبل ما تمشوا تناولوا الضيافة. سعدنا جدا بكم ونتمنى نشوفكم في سيمينارات دورات تدريبية ثانية تبع البرنامج التطوير المهني المستمر. شكرا كثير. نعمل لك اكاونت. وين يا كيف عملت تمام؟ زينب والسلام. شكرا. قعدنا